Hey guys, it's Colbot. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking at dialogues in Minecraft. In 1.21.6, Mojang introduced dialogues which allow the user to be displayed custom information like this. So this is a shop dialog that I created, and where every item is free, but you can give it a custom name like hello, and you can select the item you want, even the count of the item, and you can enchant it. And when you click buy item, it'll run this custom command and give that to the user. So I'm going to show you how you can create a custom system just like this in your Minecraft world using Datapacks. This is a really useful feature, especially for server owners. So let's get right into it. First, let's go ahead and create our Datapack using /Datapack create, and we'll name this dialog. We'll give it a description, and we'll press enter. And now, if we open up our world folder, and we go to Datapacks, we'll see the one that I already had in here for the shop and our new one called Dialog. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code and open folder. We'll navigate to the same folder and we'll open up this Datapack folder right here. Dialogs are defined in data/your namespace /dialog. So even though it says dialog/dialog, that's because this dialog is our namespace, and this is the dialog folder inside of our namespace. And then to create a new dialog, we'll just say our dialog.json. And so here's where, inside of this JSON file, where we define the information about our dialog. And so I'm going to go ahead and create the simplest possible dialog we can have just to make sure everything's working, and so you can see a working example in Minecraft. Let's go ahead and give this object a type of Minecraft notice. That's the simplest type you can have. We'll give it a title of my first dialog, and that's actually all we need to get our dialog working. So we have a Minecraft notice with the title of my first dialog. Now there's going to be no content in this dialog, but we'll work on adding that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and save and quit. Since this is an experimental feature, we'll have to log out and log back in every single time, as well as click I know what I'm doing, just to make sure we know what we're doing, which we do. So we'll type dialog show at your name, and then we can see our dialog is populated right here. Dialog our dialog, and then we can hit done and press this button to show our first dialog. And as you can see, it's not very much, but you can see this custom screen button right here that'll show you this message and give you the option to save and quit to title. And then we've got our default OK button down at the bottom and this big empty screen. If we hit OK, it exits out of the dialog, as well as if we press escape. So now let's go ahead and add a little bit more to our dialog. We can add different types of body elements into our dialog to display content. So let's go ahead back into our dialog JSON file, and we'll go ahead and add a field called body. And this is an array, and it contains objects which are body elements. And body elements have a type, and so we'll start with plain message. If we give it contents, we can make it say, hello world, this is my first dialog. And we can also give it a width. By default, this is 200, but maybe we want it to be a little narrower. We can make it be like 100. So this won't really matter for this amount of content, but if we maybe copy this over a few times, then we'll be able to see this effect. So let's go ahead and save that, go back to Minecraft, rejoin the world. And now when we open our dialog, it has this content which is limited to a width of 100. And for example, if we went back and changed this to the default 200, which of course we don't have to include it at all, we can see that it's a little bit wider here, and this looks a little bit better. Now, of course, you can also have multiple body elements. That's why it's an array. Go ahead and add a type of item, and we just need a key of item here. And in this item key, we can go ahead and give it an ID, and this is where we define what item we want to display. We'll display Minecraft, maybe bamboo. And we can also give it a count. So for example, if we wanted to have 12 bamboo, we can save that log back in. And inside our dialog, we've got our text, and below that, 12 bamboo displayed right here. When you hover over it, as you can see, it displays this little tooltip. Now you can also add any type of custom components. So for example, I could add a component enchantment glint override to give this bamboo an enchantment glint. So let's relog with this change. And as we can see, this bamboo is now enchanted because we gave it an enchantment glint through item components. Anyways, there's a lot more we can do with this item body element. As you can see, we just defined our type and our item, but we can also define, for example, a description, and we'll name this a bunch of bamboo, and let's see what effect this has. As we can see, it just displays a bunch of bamboo right next to this item. Now you may notice that it's a little close, and so we can adjust the padding on it by changing the width. For example, width, the default is 16, so let's maybe set this to 24. And when we look in here, it's a little bit more spaced out, and that looks a little bit nicer. You can also do this for height as well if you wanted to space it out between the other body element. We can also adjust whether we show the tooltip. So let's set this to false. And as you can see, we no longer have the tooltip that displays when we hover over the item. Another one we can do is show decorations. We can set this to false to hide the count of the item, as well as if this had a durability bar, like a pickaxe or something that was half damaged. As you can see now, it doesn't show that we have 12 bamboo, it just says a bunch of bamboo. You still see this enchantment glint right here that we've defined. And that's about it for what you can do with this item body element. Now let's move on and add something a little bit more interesting, which is a way to add a custom button into the pause menu so that we can open our dialog without needing a command block. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to give this an external title, and that defines what the button is going to say on the outside. I'll say MFD for my first dialog. You usually want this to be a little bit shorter than your regular title, just so that you can see it inside of this button right here. Next, we're going to add inside of this data folder our Minecraft namespace. Inside of here, we'll say tags/dialog. And now we'll create our pause screen additions.json. And we'll say values, and we'll create our list, including dialog, our dialog. And that's going to display dialog, our dialog, which is the dialog we've been working on, instead of this report bugs button right here on the pause menu. So I'll save and quit, reopen this. And as you can see, it says MFD. There's a little tooltip warning right here that says custom options are provided by third-party servers. And we'll just ignore that because we know what we're doing. And as you can see, that button opens our dialog just like our command block does. Now let's look at one more way you can access custom dialogs. We'll create a new tag inside this dialog tags group. We'll say quick actions JSON, and we'll say values dialog, our dialog, just like before. And with this, we can now open this dialog using the G key, which is the quick actions key by default. And of course, you can also customize this down at the bottom in miscellaneous under quick actions. You can make this whatever you want. So now we have two ways to open dialogs, using the D key, using our button inside of the pause menu. Hey guys, thanks for watching this far in the video. If you're enjoying it, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. I'd also really appreciate it if you'd let me know what you want to see next by dropping a comment down below, letting me know what you're interested in so I can make a video on that topic next. Anyways, thanks for doing those things. We'll get back to the video. Now that we've looked at how to add custom content into Minecraft using our dialogs here, let's go ahead and look at how to use actions inside of these buttons here to make these dialogs do stuff. So let's go back into our code right here, into our dialog, and we will add a new key called action. And this takes an array with a few parameters. The only one we need to define is a label. And maybe this will say ta-da. And now if we go back into Minecraft, the button down at the bottom says ta-da instead of OK. We can do a lot more with this though. For example, we could add a tooltip, abracadabra, and we can even change the width. The default width of this is 150, but we could set this maybe to 75 to make it a little bit smaller. And inside of our dialog here, as you can see, it says ta-da. It's a little bit smaller, and we've got abracadabra on our tooltip right here. That's how you can customize the appearance of this button. Now let's go ahead and add a custom action. So we'll use action and give it a type of run command. This requires a key called command, and we'll say xp add current entity 100 levels. This is going to make the button give the player 100 levels when they click it. So we'll save that, go back into our game, and as we can see, ta-da, it does make us confirm this command so that, again, servers can't abuse this power to run commands on the user's behalf without them knowing. But then once we hit yes, it adds 100 levels to our experience bar. The only limitation with this run command is that the player must have the appropriate permissions to run this command right here. Now, what if we wanted to add multiple actions down here? So instead of just having one button, we could maybe have two, or even more than two. Let's go ahead and start by doing just two. And to do that, we'll say the type of the dialog will be Minecraft confirmation rather than Minecraft notice. And we'll see we get a few errors here. This action needs to be titled yes, and we also need to have a key called no. This one is exactly the same as yes, except we do need to provide a label for it. It's not optional like it is for our notice dialog. We'll maybe make this level say never mind, and we'll save that, go back into our game, and as we can see, we've got ta-da, which gives us 100 levels, and we've got never mind, which does nothing. Now, what if we wanted to add even more actions? Well, let's go ahead and change this type to multi-action. And instead of having yes and no, we just have a key called actions. And this is a list. And let's go ahead and paste this into our list as well as this. Give it our commas here and save that. And now we can add another action here if we want to. We can make this say another one. Maybe give this an action. And we'll give this a type of open URL. You can probably guess what this one is going to do. We'll give it our URL right here. And when we open up Minecraft, we've got ta-da, which gives us 100 levels. We've got nevermind, which does nothing. And we've got another one, which opens cobalt.com right here. If we click yes, as we can see, it opens up our browser with cobalt.com. We can also define how this dialog looks here by changing the number of columns we have for our buttons here. So let's go ahead and say columns 3. Since we have 3 buttons, we'll just space them nice and evenly. And as you can see, ta-da, never mind, another one, all in line right here. Now here's a bonus little tip for you. You may be wondering what happens if you have a label that is really long, and you have a width that is really short, maybe like 50. Well, let's look at what happens in the game when we do this. As you can see, it automatically gives it this scrolling effect where you can read the entire thing while watching the button scroll. So as you can see, it says really long. This button doesn't do anything because we didn't give it an action, as you can see, but you get the point. Now let's go ahead and go over a few more options that are common to all dialog types. So let's go ahead and say pause, and this is what controls whether the game will pause in single player when the dialog is opened. So if we set this to false, as you can see, you can hear that button unclick as we have the dialog open. Whereas before, that did not happen. As you can see, we're waiting, but as soon as we close the dialog is when we hear the button click. Another thing we get is can close with escape, which of course is by default true, but if we set this to false as well, we can disable the ability of the user to close it with escape. So as you can see, I'm pressing escape right now, but it is not closing. And this is really handy to make sure that the user reads the dialogue, acknowledges its content, and then selects the appropriate option rather than just closing out of the dialogue because it's in their way. Our final field here is after action. And this can be one of a few options. It can be close, it can be none, or it can be wait for response. So by default, this is set to close, and this closes the dialogue after a button is pressed or escape is pressed or whatever happens. But if you set this to none, then nothing will happen when the dialogue is dismissed. The dialogue will not dismiss, and it'll be up to other methods in the Datapack to close that dialogue using /dialog clear on the player. The only thing about this is that we do have to disable pause for this to work, and that's because we can't have the player be getting locked into this, because if the game is paused and not running, then there's no way for the Datapack to close that dialogue manually later. So we got to make sure pause is set to false. Then we can go ahead and try this out. And as you can see, when we press these buttons, the commands still run. Just like that, we can add our levels, and we can even open our websites, but we cannot close out of this dialogue no matter what we do. We can still close it with escape, which is an interesting phenomenon, but of course we could also disable that by disabling can close with escape. The only way to get out of this, if the dialogue doesn't have another way, is by clicking here and saving and quitting to title. Of course, that will take you out of the dialogue and you get a fresh start in your world. That way you don't get locked into anything. And the final after action option is wait for response. And this simply shows a waiting for response screen. It says waiting for server. And it gives you this option in a few seconds to go back just in case you want to give up on waiting for the server. The server may not want to handle your request, or there may be a bug in the Datapack that doesn't allow the server to handle your request. That option is more for custom actions, which are defined by a server plugin or something of the like. It's not really so much useful in vanilla. Now there is one more aspect of dialogues that we have to go over, and that is the input system of dialogues. And to show this off, I'm going to create a new dialog called inputs.json. And we're just going to define a simple little dialog here. It's going to have a title, a couple of buttons at the bottom, and here's where we're going to add our inputs. We're just going to add an inputs field up here, and this is going to be an array that will hold our inputs. This inputs field is available on any type, so you can have Minecraft confirmation, a Minecraft multi-action, Minecraft notice. The only reason we're using confirmation is because we want to have two buttons down at the bottom, a cancel and a confirm button. We'll go ahead and add an input here, and all inputs have two required fields, key and type. We'll go ahead and set the key to name and the type to Minecraft text. This text type has a few fields, one of which is label. We can give this a label. This label, we'll name it name. This is going to be what is shown in front of this text box to label it. And then we've also got initial. This is what's going to first show up in the text box when the user opens the dialog. And now, as we can see, we've got this inputs, we've got a yes and no button, and we can go back to Minecraft and relog. We'll make sure and open up our other dialog, our inputs dialog here. And as we can see, we get our name here, and it says Jeff, just like we previewed. So just because we put the initial value to Jeff, that's why it says Jeff right here in this field by default. But of course, we can change it, make it say hello, make it say hi, whatever you want it to say here. And then of course, we've got these two buttons. They don't do anything at the moment because we haven't set them up yet. So let's go ahead and set them up. We can say for our confirm button, we'll give it an action with a type of run command, and we'll give it a command to run, we'll say give at s Minecraft dirt, and we'll give it an item component custom name equals. Make sure we escape these quotes here because we don't want to close out these quotes. We want to include a separate set of quotes inside of this item component right here. So we'll use the backslash character to escape that, and we'll name it name. Backslash quote again here, and this should be good for that. And now, as we can see, if we relog, when we hit confirm, it gives us a piece of dirt that is named name, and it does not have the name that we input into this input here. So how do we take the input from here and put it into the action right here into this command? Well, it turns out we need to use a different type of action here, and this is going to be a dynamic action type. So if we type dynamic / run command, then we use the template field instead, and we can actually create macro arguments by doing $ and opening and closing parentheses. And then inside of there, we just put whatever key we used for our inputs here. So for this one, we've named it name, so we'll just put that right there. And when we run this, it'll go ahead and put the name that we have typed into this input field here into this spot in the command. So let's go ahead and test that out. As we can see, we've got it named Jeff. That's by default. But if we hit confirm and yes, we get a piece of dirt named Jeff. And if we went ahead in here and we named this Mike, for example, and hit confirm, yes, we get one named Mike. So we can name it whatever we want to using this name right here. Now let's look at some other types of inputs right here. So let's go ahead and maybe add a key of enchant, and we'll make it type of Boolean. And this will have a label enchant item. This will just be a checkbox that displays in our dialog. And our initial value, maybe we want it to be enchanted by default, so we'll set that to true. Then we can add our item component down in our template here. We can type a comma and say enchantment glint override equals $ parentheses enchant. What it's going to do is it's going to replace this with 0B if the checkbox is unchecked, and 1B if the checkbox is checked. So that's going to work nicely with our system here. So let's reload this world. And as you can see, we've got this checkbox right here, enchant item. If we click enchant item, we click yes. And as you can see, we've got an enchantment glint on this item. Whereas if we did not check this, we would get no enchantment glint whatsoever. Now, what if we wanted to do something a little more complex with this Boolean input type? So let's make a new one. We'll make this a key of stack and a type of Boolean, label of whole stack, because this is going to give the user a whole stack when they've got it checked. So let's just not set this initial to show that it's by default set to false. And for what we can do is we can actually set this at the end. So in our command, we've got give at s Minecraft dirt with these item components, and we'll put $ parentheses stack at the end here. And what we want to do, because true and false, or 0B and 1B, make no sense at the end right here. So how can we get this to maybe say 1 or 64, depending on whether the box is checked or not? Well, we can use the on false key to set what it's going to be, what the value is going to be here when we have the checkbox unchecked. So maybe we set this to 1. And on true, we'll set this to 64. So that way, when it's unchecked, we'll get just one item. And when it's true, when it's checked, we'll get 64 right here. As you can see, we've got our whole stack checkbox right here. And we're going to hit confirm. And we got a whole stack of Jeff Dirts enchanted as well. Now let's improve this a little bit and change this from a Boolean to be a number range. A number range doesn't get on true or on false. We'll name this count instead. We'll say start will be 1, end will be 64, and step will be 1. And so that means it's going to start at 1, so we'll start with one item at the very lower end of the slider, and we'll go all the way up to 64 at the high end of the slider because that's the most we can have as a stack, and then we'll go by 1. And so that should be it because we're already using this key named stack and this key named stack down here. It doesn't really matter what we call these, but if we wanted to, we could rename this in both places to be maybe count instead. That makes a little bit more sense for our name. That should be it though in terms of changing this input out. And we can see it starts in the middle, which is a little interesting, and oh, it's got half of an item stack at every value. Well, that's because it actually starts by default in the middle of this range here. So we've got start 1 to 64. Well, the middle between 1 and 64 is 32.5. So it'll start at 32.5. So we need to set this initial value to be 1 because we want to start with one item by default. And that's going to allow the step to take it from 1 to 2 to 3, all the even numbers instead of all of the half numbers just like we've got here, because when it starts at 32.5, obviously steps of 1 will keep it at the 0.5s. So let's go ahead and relog. And now we fixed our issue here. We start with a count of 1 and we can go all the way up to 64 if we like, or any value in between. So if we wanted 32, maybe coals, we can say not enchanted, confirm. We've got 31 coal dirts right here. Now finally, let's look at one more input type. We'll add this in addition, and we'll say it's a key of item. This will be a type of single option, and it will have a label of item. Then we can say options and define a list of options we want to be in this single option input. So maybe we start with dirt, and maybe we have cobblestone, and we have granite, and we have andesite. And so now that we've defined these options here, let's go ahead and take our key here, and instead of dirt, we'll use $item. And so now it will apply all of these custom components to whichever item that we have selected here. As you can see, we've got dirt, cobblestone, granite, or andesite that will be pasted right in here depending on which we select. So let's go ahead back into our game, and we've got our name. We can enchant it or not, so maybe we name it Hello World. We can have it enchanted. We can get 18, and we can select granite, for example. If I hit confirm, we'll get 18 enchanted granite named Hello World. And this is actually a full working example of the shop, just like you saw at the intro of the video. So now you know how to do everything that you can do with Dialogs. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.